Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Black Mental Health Matters. I'm Dr. Carrie Ann Williams. I'm a psychiatrist practicing here in Massachusetts, and this is a podcast that's about everything related to mental wellness in the Black community. And today, we're going to learn about how breastfeeding helps to promote mental wellness. So I want to introduce you to my guest for today. Her name is Dr. Amaka Namani, and she's a pediatrician practicing in Hershey, Pennsylvania. She's also the author of the book Ziora's Quest, Mommy's Milk Rocks, which is a children's picture book on breastfeeding from the point of view of a 6-year-old. And at the time of the recording, the book is on pre-order, but by the time this airs, it'll be fully available for purchase. So welcome to the show, Dr. Namani.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on here. Thanks for having me, Carrie Ann.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and why did you write this book?
Absolutely. So I am Dr. Amaka Namani. Interesting. So my full name is Chiamaka Onyewuchi Namani. So my roots are Nigerian. So I'm fondly known by Dr. O as my patient because for the longest time in my career, I practiced with my maiden name, Onyewuchi. So clearly, that's a hard name to pronounce, especially if you're not African. So everyone just called me Dr. O. And my family and friends basically call me Amaka, but my roots are Nigerian. I'm a mom of three beautiful children, 10, 8, and 2, and a wife as well.
And I was reading on your website that Amaka means beautiful.
It does. Not vain at all, right? So my full name is Chiamaka, which means God is beautiful or God is good. But growing up, honestly, I guess in elementary and high school, a lot of my friends called me Chiamaka, but most of my family called me Amaka, and if my mom or my dad called me Chiamaka, that always meant I was in trouble. So, which didn't happen a lot, but Amaka was just basically what everyone, even back home in Nigeria, because I still consider Nigeria home. That's what I most people call me. I was born in Houston, but we moved to Nigeria as I was still an infant when we moved back, and I lived in Nigeria up until about age 16. When I was done with high school, and that's when we moved back here with my sister for college and everything else.
And so Ziora's Quest, Mommy's Milk Rocks. What is it about?
So Ziora's Quest, Mommy's Milk Rocks is a children's picture book, and it's a picture book on breastfeeding. But unlike most other books out there, it is a book obviously for children. And so it's basically Ziora is a 6-year-old girl so she's a 6-year-old girl who prayed for a baby sister, who wished for a baby sister for about a year, finally gets her sister and realizes, well, being a big sister wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be. When is she going to play with me? When will she walk? When will she talk? Why is she a mommy's breast so much? What's the big deal about this breast milk? So even though she's a very sweet girl, she's got a little bit of jealousy there because, her expectations are, not really met. So on a day she was supposed to go to the playground with mommy and Sissy, she excitedly goes into the room, but realizes Sissy's crying and has just thrown up all over mommy. Being a sweet girl that she is, she decides, okay, mommy, we'll go another day. And mommy's like, are you sure? And she's being a sweet girl. She says, sure, mommy, we'll do it. But obviously as a 6-year-old, she's hurt. So she goes back to her room. I'm going to leave a little bit of the plot here, but she's eventually zapped into a fantasy world called Milky White, which is a land where all the moms breastfeed, and there are moms of different ethnicities represented. She meets with her pediatrician there, her best pediatrician, who happens to be Dr. O in the book. And she learns all these fun facts and real facts, obviously facts that are real, in a fun way about breastfeeding. She comes back to her room, to her house, and realizes and understands and is more appreciative of mom as to why she's, as to why her sister is taking all this time. So that's kind of the plot of the book.
Wow. I mean, that sounds really just creative and imaginative. I wish I had that kind of storytelling ability and that kind of creativity. But how is this book supposed to be read by the child, or is it like the parent that's reading it to the child? How do you imagine this book being used?
It's supposed to be a parent reading to the child. So yes, you get the maximum, the bonding experience, and I make it in a way that, it starts hopefully conversations, like the child's, most children at that age are very curious and they want to ask a lot of questions. So that's the goal, is to have a parent read it to the child. And it's interesting you talk about the creativity, because believe it or not, I pretty much co-wrote this book with my 10-year-old daughter, who so my this book was inspired by my now 8-year-old, who was 6 years old when my son was born. So I have a 2-year-old son. My now 8-year-old, when she was 6, prayed, like literally prayed for a baby brother, because she felt really bad for daddy. Because daddy, we had 2 girls at the time, and she's like, well, daddy needs a partner. My husband didn't mind at all, but she just felt like we just needed an extra guy in the house. So at prayer time, she would literally ask God, like, why are you not answering my prayer? So we thought we were done, but we figured, why kill the faith of a 6-year-old? Let's give her something to believe in. And we were lucky to have a boy. That was totally not planned. So on Christmas Day of 2019, we told them that they were going to be big sisters to a baby brother. So that was inspired by her. And then I actually probably am going to have a blog section on my website, but I don't think it's on there right now.
No.
The first draft for this book was written by my 10-year-old daughter. So
Oh.
she, and I don't know if we have this question, if we'll talk about it. So I'll just talk briefly about this
Yeah.
part. So I remember, so I quit my outpatient job back in December as a general pediatrician. So I'm doing more like intermittent contract and locum stuff. So I always kind of wanted to explore like the creative part of me. I come from a family of writers, actually, and artists.
Oh, okay.
So I have two of my siblings are engineers. I'm a doctor, and my other sister is a psychologist. Um, but they all are like either like great artists or really good writers. But I was like, I'm a doctor. I never really explored any like artistic parts of me. Besides, like, I just love fashion. So I was like, that's probably like the creative part of me. I got that from my mom. But anyways, I decided to tried exploring different parts of myself, after kind of just leaving a full-time job. And I remember talking to my 10-year-old and telling her, hey, Amara, I want to write I think I want to write a book on breastfeeding. And I'll tell you, my 10-year-old is an avid reader. First of all, she's like one of those that'll sneak and read a book. But she's also a very, should I say a harsh critic? Like, she keeps it real. My 8-year-old is a very sweet, mommy's perfect. Like, there is no better person in the universe. Like, everything I do is great. My 10-year-old is, mommy, you're awesome, but, like, let's, like, mommy, we need to work out, or things
Here's a
like
way
that.
that you can improve yourself.
Yes, that's her. She's very sweet too, but she'll give it to you. So she said, in her words, she said, mommy, no offense, but why do kids want to why do kids care about breastfeeding? Like, I understand
Mm,
why kids want to learn, like, why it's important to brush your teeth or eat vegetables, but why does a kid care about breastfeeding? And
mhm,
in that moment, I wasn't sure what my why was. Like, I just knew I wanted to write something related to breastfeeding because, I mean, I'm passionate about it, and why shouldn't everybody else be, right? But I had to go and think and kind of reflect. And a few days later, I figured it out. I came up with my why, which was that I wanted to normalize breastfeeding even for
mhm,
little girls. In my practice, which was in a rural area, a lot of children just kind of grow up just seeing formula as the norm. That not a lot of
mhm,
children you know see it as normal to have a mom like on the breast. And I
mhm.
remember even my 8-year-old, when I told her after I had written the book, she was trying to share with her friends that her mom was writing a book on breastfeeding, and her friend says, "What's that?" You know,
Mhm.
and so that was kind of an eye opener to me, and I wanted to do it in a fun way, like an entertaining way, but also to kind of empower our next generation of girls to know this is natural, just other mammals do it,
Mhm.
humans do it. And we've sexualized the breast so much in our culture that I
Yeah.
just wanted to normalize that. So I came up with my kind of 3 E's, which was like to empower, educate, and entertain, and that was kind of how everything started. So long answer there, I'm sorry, but
No, so
yeah.
empower, educate, and entertain. No, that sounds great. And so it is geared towards that school age where those kids have a lot of questions about, what does this all mean? And, what's happening?
Yes, like kids age like 4 to 8 would be, I would say, the target age.
Okay. Wow. Wow. And so, I'm sure some of our listeners might be wondering, just like your child, that's like, well, why would be interested in breastfeeding? Why would I bring a pediatrician to talk about breastfeeding on a mental health podcast? And I think a lot of times people, kind of forget that, of course, both pediatricians and child psychiatrists, we both have to be experts at child development.
Absolutely.
And you can see firsthand how a child's development is affected by whatever is going on in their life, including breastfeeding. So you know how they develop physically, emotionally, and what we call cognitively, which is basically how kids kind of learn and develop different parts of their brain. So tell us a little bit about what you know about the connection between breastfeeding and the mental wellness of children and their development.
Yes, absolutely. So, there's been a few studies done related to that. So the mental health for mom, but also the cognitive development of the child.
Mhm.
So we know that skin to skin ignites the neurons that pretty much help build the brain synapses, and we
Mhm.
have, I believe, up to 100 billion of those neurons are in the first several months of life. So pretty much when a mom is, for moms that are nursing, so when we talk about breastfeeding, you can either nurse or pump and express to the baby, but there's something about that skin to skin,
Mhm.
which you can also get if you were bottle feeding the baby, right? Like, um as long as that, so there's something about that skin to skin that helps to ignite those synapses, and those studies were pretty much done in moms that breastfeed or nurse their babies. So we do know that has a great impact on the cognitive development of a child. In addition, some studies reveal that children who were breastfed have up to a higher higher IQ points, up to 7.5 points by elementary, and tend to have higher reading, comprehensive, and math scores even as adults. So there's not a lot of studies done on that, but that's definitely amongst the many other benefits of breastfeeding that something that moms should definitely think about. So yeah.
Wow. So, for one, the touch, the skin to skin contact helps to develop their neurological system, their nerve system, and
Yes.
that includes their body and their brain. And
Yep.
then the nutrition itself,
Yes.
the nutrients available in breast milk helps to improve the intellect of the child. Overall, they learn and they grow in a very strong way. That's
Absolutely.
amazing.
That's very true. It
That's
is
amazing.
beyond amazing. It is the power of nature.
And now tell us about your own experience. You also have breastfed. What was it like for you emotionally and psychologically?
Yes. So I am happy to say that I was able to mostly successfully breastfeed all 3 of my children. Each child I had a different experience with each child. So I had my first 2 daughters in residency, actually, which, as most of us may know, is not the easiest time in life. So so for my first child, I remember being very stressed.
Yeah.
um, I remember being very stressed because I was in residency. Plus, I was just clueless. Like, even though I was in a pediatrics residency program, and thankfully this is something that's changing, we didn't really get much training with respect to lactation. So I was really clueless. I remember my first hand well, I guess not really first hand, but my first observation of like real life like breastfeeding up close was a very good friend of mine, India, who was actually a single mom at the time, but exclusively nursed her 6 month old. And I remember being pregnant at that time and thinking to myself, wow, well, not just thinking to myself, but even having a conversation with her, like, this is amazing. But to answer your question, even though I was stressed, I remember my happiest moments were like when I was actually performing the act of breastfeeding my daughter. Not just like pumping. To be honest, I never really liked pumping. Like, that's till today. I would nurse like 50,000 times a day, but pumping was just never anything exciting for me, right? But with my daughter, I remember just when I would just hold her, even after like a long like call, just no matter how exhausted I was, it was just it would calm me. And then later came to read and find out that actually that's how it's meant to be. So oxytocin, which is a hormone that's secreted by the posterior pituitary gland in the brain, actually has a calming effect on the mother. So it reduces a physiological tension that tends to happen as a result of prolactin, especially which so there's two hormones that are involved, and I'm not going to get too technical here. I promise. It's prolactin and oxytocin, but oxytocin has more of a calming effect for a breastfeeding mom. So a mom who's breastfeeding will actually experience a sense of well-being and contentment as she's nursing the child. So every time she breastfeeds, she derives great pleasure from that experience. And that's why a lot of times moms who breastfeed are less likely to actually suffer from postpartum depression.
Ah, okay. So it actually can help to reduce the risk of postpartum depression as well.
Yes, it can.
Wow, wow. Oh my goodness. And so that oxytocin is released. There's that feeling of connection, that feeling of well-being. It's good for mom's mental health. And as we talked about, it's good for child's mental health as well. And so what would you say are some of the biggest kind of misconceptions or misunderstandings about breastfeeding?
Yeah. So I think a big one would be that I'm not well that it's some moms, might think it's just going to happen automatically. It's going to happen naturally. And even though it's a natural process, it's not always that way. So what I mean is, so there's a natural course of events that's going to happen. There are several factors that could affect like your milk supply, like mom's medical condition, what form of delivery you have, actually, whether it's vaginal versus C-section. But even as it's a natural process, it's important that moms are also patient with themselves and realize, it's not every baby is just gonna latch on and figure it all out. So give yourself time, give your baby time as well to figure it out. Like I said, I have 3 children. Every child was different. I remember my first daughter, was tongue-tied, and I was in pain. I had a C-section with her. So my experience was completely different because I didn't have the knowledge base that I have now, or I had with my second and third. I was more stressed. I also had a C-section, which affected my milk coming in, like came in a few days later. So even though I guess in my head, even right after having the baby, I just figured, oh, we're just gonna do this thing. Like that's just what's gonna happen. It didn't quite happen like that, and I remember being very frustrated and almost feeling like I was failing myself. But it's important at the same time to have like a strong support system. So that's one misconception is that it's just going to happen automatically or naturally. So that I feel like that's probably the biggest misconception out there. A few others might be that, I would really call this still a misconception, is a lot of, or probably more like a lack of knowledge. Like a lot of moms feel there's certain conditions they feel like, oh, I can't breastfeed, like, oh, I've had a breast augmentation, so I can't. And these are real life experiences. Like these are things that I've actually had conversations with about moms in my practice. Like had moms who said, oh, I'm not even going to give it a try because I had a breast augmentation, like years ago, like in my 20s or whatever, and that's not true. Or oh, I'm on, Zoloft, for instance, and so I can't breastfeed. So it's important that you arm yourself with knowledge. Find, even, I always tell my moms who are, if I have a mom who's pregnant, um, well, most times they're coming to me truly, but if as a mom, if you're out there, and it's your first child, I usually say seek out like a pediatrician that's, if you want to breastfeed, find a pediatrician that's going to support you in that journey.
Mhm.
Because even though as physicians, we'll always have the best intentions, like all the time, pretty much. But there are doctors that probably have more knowledge than others. So seek out a doctor that kind of aligns with your values, or your goals. So that's also important. Yeah. So I'll probably stop there with those two big things.
I guess I had another question that I kind of just thought
Yeah.
of, and it's about the length of time that a woman can breastfeed for, because I feel like sometimes these factors are influenced by availability of appropriate kind of facilities for people to pump and things like that. And are there any misconceptions around the length of time that breastfeeding should occur? Are people ending breastfeeding too soon?
That's a very good question and very timely. So up until June of this year, the AAP, actually, the guidelines had advised or encouraged breastfeeding exclusive breastfeeding for mother breastfeeding, for 6 months, and then up to a year, or as long as mutually desired by mom and baby. As of June 27th of this year, those guidelines were updated to reflect that breastfeeding is encouraged for up to 2 years in moms that are breastfeeding. And obviously, after 6 months, we always recommend adding complementary food. So it's not
Right.
just breast milk after 6 months. The ABM, the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine, has all, and well, I'm sorry, the WHO, I meant to say WHO, pardon me there, has always had recommendations to nurse for 2 years, but the AAP finally got on board with those WHO recommendations this year. So to answer your question, yes, I think in our culture, a lot of women are even kind of shamed when they are breastfeeding past a year or even
Yeah.
6 months in some cases, and a lot of that is due to a lack of knowledge. You
Mhm.
know, both on the medical side of things, even as doctors, as physicians, some of us don't encourage our moms. Some of us say, oh, okay, well, once your baby turns 1, you need to stop and replace that milk with cow's milk, which is really not necessary. Cow's milk is really not necessary as long as the child is getting like vitamin D and calcium from other sources.
Mhm.
But yeah, there needs to be like a culture shift, which is again part of the goal, in writing my book, is to start those conversations. I kind of touch on that subject as well. So in my book, I talk about, so there is a page where a mom's nursing a toddler, and Ziora looks kind of shocked, like, why is that big baby like nursing? And Dr. O responds and says, I know what you're thinking. Babies can nurse for up to 2 years or longer, as long as mutually desired by mom and baby. And then at the back of my book, I actually have like a little section for the parents or grown-ups, where I kind of talk more in depth about, just talking to the parent more so about just a little bit about, about those recently updated guidelines. So very good question there.
Yeah, it's something I thought about because I was watching a video of like a vegan family, and this woman had two small children, and when her second one was born, she was breastfeeding both of them, and her
Yes.
little one was probably like a little over a year old,
Yeah.
and so I had just never heard of that before, and I think it's
Yeah.
because culturally for in America, people would say, oh, they're too big now.
Yeah.
But
And
because
that's called tandem nursing, by the way. Yeah. Where
yeah,
you're
and because her family doesn't have dairy, they don't have cow's
yeah.
milk, and so she
Mm,
continued to breastfeed, and there's benefits to that. And then she has all her other nutritional supplements that she uses, and her kids are healthy. And I just kind of thought, I was like, do how come so many other people don't do this? And I wonder if people know that they can,
yeah.
whether they want to pump or whether they want to tandem breastfeed, they can do that for a longer period of
Yeah.
time, and it adds additional health benefits.
Yeah, there's a lack of knowledge for sure. And I think also in our community, in the Black community, there's obviously historical, there's this historical aspect to it with wet nursing and things like that. But there's
Yeah.
also a lack of, also because lack of role models, again,
Mhm.
most likely secondary to the historical part of it, where a lot of there's maybe not a lot of grandmothers breastfed.
Mhm.
So you don't have a culture where you have girls that grew up seeing their moms or grandmothers breastfeed. Like, for instance, I know, like, my daughters hopefully almost certainly are going to grow up breastfeeding their baby. Like, that's just like, that's what's norm. When you're surrounded by something, that's your norm. My
Yeah.
6-year-old is never 8-year-old. My 8-year-old is never, she doesn't know what formula looks like, so that would be a very foreign concept to her. And
Mhm.
that's my goal, is to just, when we have these things, you have girls knowing this is natural, this is normal. This baby is getting nutrition, like this mother is giving this baby life through her breasts, and how this is how nature has made it to work. Then we have a next generation of girls that are growing up knowing that this is normal, and that eventually, when I grow up and have my own children, this is what I'm going to want to do.
Oh, yeah, I like that the mom is giving her life. Yeah, yeah. No, that's
It is.
amazing. That's amazing. So now I wanted to just think a little bit about the women out there who, for a variety of reasons, cannot breastfeed. They've
Yeah.
been advised by their doctor, you cannot breastfeed, or whatever else the case may be. What do you what would you say to those women about breastfeeding and the benefit? I guess based on our discussion today.
Yeah, sure. So honestly, the one thing I would say, Carrie Ann, first of all, is empower yourself with knowledge. Because the truth is, statistics reveal that most moms, I believe 87% or more, I don't know why I forget the numbers now, but most moms actually do want to breastfeed. Most
Mhm.
mothers want to initiate breastfeeding. So that says a lot.
Mhm.
So in my personal experience as a pediatrician, I've found that a lot of times when moms don't want to breastfeed, it's because
Mhm.
they have these misconceptions that they
Mhm.
can't do it because it's maybe because it's too hard, or
Mhm.
because I'm on this medicine, or because I had this surgery, or because I have this medical condition. So again, that goes back to saying, find a physician that aligns with your values and that can properly educate you on those things. So that would be my number one thing. And again, and then if you have the mom who, after knowing all the benefits and everything, decides, I don't think this is for me, that is okay. There is no judgment. So I would say to those moms, skin, we talked briefly about how skin to skin helps to build those synapses in the brain. Have as much bonding time with your child as you can. When you feed your child, talk to your child, laugh with your child, read to your baby, even from birth, sing to your baby, sing with your baby. Do those things. Those are bonding experiences that you don't necessarily have to breastfeed to do those things. And I know there's several moms out there who would like to breastfeed, but maybe they're, because of a medical condition, aren't able to. Like I said, you can still have these moments. And again, there are, on the flip side, if in addition to the bonding, you can also get, there's donor milk, in
I
order
was
to
going to
get
ask you
natural.
about that too. What do you think about the donated breast milk banks?
Yes, from the milk banks, exactly, because those are
Mhm.
pasteurized and go through the lab and all that stuff. So you can still get the benefits of breast milk from by going to the milk banks to get that for your child. You get all the benefits of pretty much all the benefits of breast milk. So that's another way to go. But I will say, regardless of which route you go, whether you're breastfeeding or exclusively pumping and feeding your baby pumped breast milk, or formula feeding, bond with your child. That is something that we know for certain helps to in the cognitive development of a child. Singing with a child, playtime is so important, especially in those, but at bath time, interact with your child. Those play a very, very important roles in the development of your child.
Oh, yeah, I think that's really helpful, because I said there's so much judgment sometimes for women who either decide not to breastfeed or cannot breastfeed for one reason or another. And so for them to know that there are still opportunities for that oxytocin to be released, for them to have that skin to skin contact, for them to still bond, and for them to still find ways to get that similar kind of nutritional benefit, whether it's I guess with in combination with talking to their professional, they're talking to their pediatrician. They can find out what can they do to guarantee the overall benefit and wellness for their child.
Yeah, and I would say, in addition, moms, do you,
Mhm.
do you, like, I have 3 children, and each child I have a different experience with each child. So imagine you cannot compare your breastfeeding journey with somebody else's. So whatever decision you make, be content with that decision. Like, don't try not to second guess yourself, you know, be proud of you. You have birthed a child. Let's start from there. That is not a walk in the park. Every mom out there can attest to that. It doesn't matter if you were in labor for 2 hours, or if you were in labor for 54 hours. You have carried a child inside of you. You have given another human life. That is something to be extremely proud of. So whatever your decision is, know that. Trust yourself. Believe in yourself, and do you. Hashtag do you.
No, that's amazing. So let's see. Anything else that you'd want to mention as we kind of, kind of come to the end here? Anything else you want to share with us about the psychological or the emotional journey that both children and adults go through when it comes to breastfeeding? Any kind of final comments?
Yes. So besides what I just said, which was do you, I would also say empower yourself with a strong support network. I cannot overemphasize the importance of that. So I feel like your journey can be totally different based on how strong your support network is. And, I know there are moms out there who are single moms, who are rocking it out. If you don't have like support, like family support, whether it's a partner, a husband, or like a mom or grandma. Thankfully, we live in an age now where there's online support networks. There's so many breastfeeding support groups. You just have to go on Facebook and search for that. There's so many of them. There's a Leche League. There is, go through even your hospital, your outpatient office most likely has one. There is so we have something called Zip Milk now. Zip Milk it's something that we are actually trying to fine tune. We're trying to have in every state. So right now, I don't remember how many states there are. I want to say maybe 10 or slightly more. So you can actually just put your zip code and find like a lactation consultant or maybe even a support group in your area. So that's something to consider. But there's so many online resources now that I feel like, it's so important that you have a support group. There are moms who have built like long lasting relationships and friendships just from those support groups, because these are women who are kind of going through the same thing that you're going through. Your hormones are all over the place usually. And these are people who can relate to how you feel and can support you in your journey. So I would say definitely have a strong support system. You're even more lucky if you have like a great partner who's there. And as a mom, the other thing I would add is learn to delegate roles. Like, sometimes we try to be super women, as Black women, as moms, we want to do it all. But girl, no. Like, you have to like learn to take care of yourself, because the truth is, we've talked about these hormones, but and I'll say this from personal experience, especially with my first, I keep talking about her, but I remember I would feel really engorged. Like I knew my milk was there because I was so stressed, like, oh, I have to go back to clinic, or I have to go back to rounds. My milk, I wouldn't have a letdown. I knew the milk was there, but I couldn't have it. I couldn't pump anything out. And actually, again, my friend I read it somewhere at the time, I learned that having a picture or a video of her as I pumped would help. And that's exactly what I did
Oh,
every single time.
wow.
If I could, I would video call her as I pumped. And that's actually what helped me get through my pumping sessions.
Oh,
So it's important. My point is your stress level has a lot to do also with your milk production. Your
oh.
body knows, your body senses when you're stressed. So take care of yourself. Let people help you. Ask people for help if you have a partner or like, someone in your house who's not necessarily going to offer that help. Learn to ask for help and learn to take care of yourself. If you can, still go on date nights with your spouse. If you have like a grandparent or like a sitter or something, go to the spa. I mean, if you can afford it, it's my happy place. I would go every day if I could. My kids know. Actually, on Fridays, my 8-year-old gives me like a back massage or foot massage most times. Like they know, like mommy does not play with this. But yeah, take care of yourself. I would say take care of yourself. Do you have a strong support system? And yeah, ask for help when you can.
Oh, that's amazing. And I like those tips. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. So guys,
Thank you.
to order your copy of the book, Now Zero's Quest Mommy's Milk Rocks, go to dramakanamani.com. I'm going to put the website in the description box. So thanks again. Take care, everyone. And I will talk to you again next week.
Thank you. Bye.